Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm John Panepinto, and as you may know, I love movies. What I decided to do this year was to watch all of the Oscar Best Picture nominees so that you don't have to. Today I'm going to be discussing my final two films, Women Talking and The Fabelmans. The Fabelmans, a biopic of Steven Spielberg, has been nominated for 7 Oscars. Best Picture, obviously, Best Actress, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Original Score, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Production Design. And Women Talking, a hard-hitting drama about the women in a devout religious community, has only been nominated for 2 Oscars, Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay. Being that none of my friends have really seen any of these movies, it's been hard to find guests, so today I'm going to do this one all by myself. Women Talking is a drama directed by Sarah Pauly about the women in a Mennonite community who have recently learned the truth about the horrendous treatment that they've been going through for pretty much most of their lives. Was it appropriate for me to wear a Kermit shirt to talk about this movie? Probably not. But all joking aside, I have to say, I was not excited for this movie. Not because I have a problem with the title Women Talking or the concept of women talking, which seems to be something that the absolutely unbelievably, reliably disgusting internet seems to have a real issue with. I just didn't know if... There's always one Oscar movie that I say, this one seems like the boring one. And this one seems like the boring one. I was not looking forward to it. As a matter of fact, my wife said, I would be shocked if you get around to watching the movie Women Talking. This was one of the final movies I watched, and in an absolutely amazing turn of events, I think it's my favorite. This movie is absolutely incredible. The fact that it's only nominated for 2 Oscars when Triangle of Sadness has like 5 or 6 is mind-blowing to me. This movie is incredible, and I'm telling you that, I'm looking you in the eyes. I don't know what it was about it. It just was such a strong story with a strong message, strong performances. Claire Foy is incredible. Rooney Mara is incredible. Jessie Buckley, who I only knew from Fargo, is just so magnetic. Ben Whishaw, who, as the only man, I think he's the only man in the movie, plays such an incredible role. And Frances McDormand is in it. I think she has 3 lines. Don't see it for her if you're like, oh, I love Frances McDormand. This ain't the one. But I gotta tell you, I loved this movie, and it's not going to get its due. I know that. But, boy, I'll tell you, of all of the movies I've watched for this Oscars project, this is the one that I'm certainly going to pick up to own. It's a movie that I think everybody should see. And a problem that people have with it is that people keep saying, it feels like a play. And to that I say, and? It was equated to me. Sometimes, the lens you see things through is different of how the way it's presented to you. This movie was presented, I had read somewhere that it was like 12 Angry Men with women. And, I mean, obviously the story is very different. It is, and it's just as good. Basically, the story, not to give anything away, you have a small, isolated Mennonite community where for a very long time the women have been waking up mysteriously bleeding and bruised and sometimes pregnant, and the higher-ups in the community have been telling them that it's the devil or that it's demons that are doing this to them and that they need to repent. And it comes to light pretty early on within the first 5 minutes of the movie that it's not the devil, it's the men in the community. And it just is a 2-hour discussion between the women as to what do we do? Do we leave? Do we stay? How are we going to approach this? And it really, really works. I cannot give it my highest recommendation. If you get the chance, see this movie. It's very important. It's more important than Top Gun Maverick, I'll tell you that. And, I like that movie. But, this is what the Oscars are for. This kind of movie that you would otherwise have not seen. So, that's my opinion on this movie. It's a strong one, but top of the list. It would be my pick to win. The second film I'll be discussing today is The Fabelmans, an autobiographical telling of the director, Steven Spielberg. The film is directed by Steven Spielberg and written by Steven Spielberg and Tony Kushner. My feelings on this film were very simple, and this can go for all biopics across the board. If your life is not more interesting than mine, there doesn't need to be a movie about it. This movie was wholly forgettable. I have to tell you, as I was watching the movie, I felt a little bad because I was like, this is the guy's life. Well, how far be it for me to say that his life is boring, but I don't know him, and I probably never will. And if I met him, I would say, hey, nice movie. Boring. Listen, I knew going into this movie, could of course be part of it, that this film was going to be exactly this. There is no more Oscar bait than this Fabelmans movie. Man, when I tell you, you are never going to talk about this movie past this Sunday at the Oscars. No one's ever going to talk about the Fabelmans again. It's probably Steven Spielberg's most forgettable movie, and everybody's like, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's so moving. Hey, you can't just set a movie in the 60s and suddenly say it's a great film because all the colors are washed out and everybody's wearing polos and horn-rimmed glasses. That's not the way that it works. The movie has to tell you a story. And it does tell you a very simple story, a small semblance of a story, but overall, I mean, there's really not much to it. It was long, and it went on, and every time I thought it ended, it was going to keep going. And what's funny is that everybody is quoting one particular part of the movie, and it's the very last scene. And it's the only part of the movie that's interesting to me. Listen, I like Paul Dano, who plays the father in The Fabelmans. He plays Sammy Fabelman's dad. And I think he's a great actor. And I think he was great in this film. Was he superb? You know, you only can mold with as much clay as you have. And I think he did what he could. I will admit I'm also a little biased. Michelle Williams plays Sammy Fabelman's mother. A very strong character, a very strong role. I'm not a Michelle Williams fan. I don't like her in anything. Not to say I don't like her, because then one day, God knows, I'll meet her and she'll be like, oh, you said you didn't like me. That's not it. She just doesn't land for me. And maybe she's a great actress, just not for me. I tend to just shut off when I see her in something. And maybe that could have led to my opinion on this film, but I don't think so. I went into it pretty open-minded. Listen, I love movies. It's a movie about movies, of which there seems to always be one in the history of the Oscars. The Academy loves movies about movies. And this kind of goes back a little bit to what Nick was saying yesterday in his episode of this series, that the issue that most people don't realize with the Oscars, and I'm not sure if it's a new thing, I don't believe it is, that the Academy members who vote in their categories do not have to have seen all the movies. If you've seen only The Fabelmans and you're eligible to vote in the Academy, you can vote for The Fabelmans for Best Picture without having seen any of the other Best Pictures. I mean, how can they police that you've seen all the movies, right? I mean, that's pretty standard, I suppose. But it gives an unfair advantage to people who just are leaning in one way, or just were struck by a certain movie and then didn't get to see something else. You know, as I mentioned just before, Women Talking, in my opinion, and maybe just my opinion, an excellent film that most people didn't get to see. You know, yesterday I saw a rundown. The public voted on like which movies they've seen and which movies they liked and which movies they've heard of, and some of them were seen by like 0 people. Not literally, but you know, like it just it's so out of balance, the voting system and just the general awareness of these movies. You have no idea how many people since I've started this have messaged me asking about The Whale, the Brendan Fraser film. The Whale is not nominated for Best Picture, but everybody thinks it is because it's gotten way more traction and you've seen it way more than all of these other films because people care about Brendan Fraser and that story. Granted, I haven't seen it, but you know, the way that the media and just social media generally places these films in front of you tells so much about how likely they are to win these awards and how likely they are that you're going to follow it and care. And that is part of why The Fabelmans is considered a favorite, because it's one that you've seen around that isn't Avatar. It's a believable pick that you've seen. You know, Triangle of Sadness is maybe not something that you've seen and you're going to go, I don't know what that is. Whereas Avatar, you can go, I definitely know what that is, but I don't know if it's an Oscar movie. The Fabelmans falls right in the middle. It's a movie that is going to catch people's eye. It's going to get people on nostalgia, especially older people. The general public, unfortunately, is not voting on this. I don't know if that's unfortunate, because if the general public voted on it, I guess like Cocaine Bear would be nominated for Best Picture. But the Academy members, the older ones, look back at this, what the story this movie tells and the time period this story is set in, and goes, oh yeah, I remember that. It's that Member Berries thing from like South Park, where it's like the nostalgia hits you in a way that you're like, oh, I love this. But really, from an outside point of view, it's wholly unremarkable. And I hate to say that, because I'm not a filmmaker. Gosh knows I couldn't make a film as good as Steven Spielberg on his worst day. But that being said, I do know story, and I know that this one lacked any major semblance of a story. That is not necessarily to its detriment. Some films are built that way, but this one is clearly something that you're not going to talk about past this Sunday. I just wanted to take a second to talk about, after going through all these films, what I think is going to win and what I would like to win. And I know I went over this a little bit with Nick yesterday. Basically, where I stand, I think that Banshees of Inisherin is going to win Best Picture. I hope that it does. I really, really enjoyed that movie. The one that I think deserves it the most is probably Women Talking. I think it's the most powerful film and the most well-executed film in the 10. But I know that it doesn't stand a chance, really, because it's an outlier. So that being said, I believe that the Banshees of Inisherin is going to walk away with the victory on Sunday. Well, that about wraps it up for my Oscar series. I really want to thank everybody who's helped me out with this. My brother Michael, Nick Sapphire, Frank Coyote, my wife, Danielle Fisher, and all of you for watching. If this is something you enjoyed, if this is something you'd like to see me do more of, I can do simple one-off movie reviews. I watch a lot of movies, and I have a lot to say about them. Let me know. If you would watch more of these, I would make more of these. So thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow me on all the socials, and enjoy the Oscars this Sunday night.